Crimson Bride, Chapter 9, Philosophy over Coffee. While trying to get through the long list of burnt bridges, Mick remembered Susie Yang. Quite a woman. Beautiful, talented, likeable. Everything Mick wasn't. They were both good at their jobs. The difference was, Susie was well liked. Mick was unknown, and not well liked by the people who had met him. God knows why Mick was trying to get into a profession he was obviously unsuited for. Why not just stick to being a private eye and leave the pipe dream of a vain TV career behind? Mick thought. He still had a possible murder to solve by a maniac claiming a Crimson Bride told him to do it. What did this have to do with the asylum 50 years ago? And he had a pair of detectives watching his every move. He knew enough of Yang to know where to find her. After all, Harrow was a small town, and everyone knew where the local celebrities stopped for a morning coffee. She reads her own articles and drinks a skinny latte in the Coffees or Us coffee shop, just a block away from his apartment building. At least I don't have to fork out for a bus or a cab, Mick thought. He also had to remember he had a ring he needed to pawn. Otherwise he was going to have to deal with some very angry debt collectors. He took a shower, shaved his 3-day-old stubble, put on a clean linen white shirt, at least as clean as fabric cleaning spray could make it seem. He even dragged a comb through the tangled mess of his hair. Susie, he thought, was the best chance of legitimizing his story and getting his show aired. So he'd need to pull out all the stops to get her on board, which would not be easy if their last encounter at the hospital was anything to go by. When he got to the coffee shop, Mick spotted her instantly. Susie Yang was a very pretty woman after all. Mick walked over to her table and sat down. "Hello, Miss Yang. I don't know if you remember me. We met in the hospital a few days ago." "My name is Mick Dalton," he said with a smile. "Oh yes, I remember you. The guy at the reception with the flyer, right? The one trying to headhunt me?" "That's me. How have you been?" "Look, Mr. Dalton, was it? I'm a very busy woman, and I don't have time to chit-chat." Okay, I'll cut to the chase. Have you given any more thought to being in my TV show? I have more evidence now, and lots more strange things have been happening to me over the last few days. Hearing this, Susie raised an eyebrow and looked at Mick, as though he was something unpleasant she had stepped in. "That's just the start of it, I promise you. Yesterday, a homeless man asked me if I wanted to buy a potato, which in itself, I admit, isn't that odd. But then he pulled a blood-stained knife on me. It belonged to my eyewitness. The blood, I mean. Then that same old man committed suicide by throwing himself into the road while screaming, 'She made me do it.' Meaning the Crimson Bride, the ghost of Harrow Hall." Mick could see he had piqued her interest, so he continued. "Then there was poor old Mr. Jenkins. He was an orderly working at Harrow Hall Asylum 50 years ago. He told me all the horrible things the staff used to do to the patients there. While I was interviewing, he started clutching his chest and arm." Susie gave a large sigh and called the waiter over to get her another latte. "This one I was there for, though. And I saw the woman, Margaret Williams, that the article mentioned. But she was not alive. I think she's the Red Woman, the Crimson Bride, out for revenge for some past misdeeds done to her." Mick handed her the news clipping he had taken from the library when he first started researching this whole damn thing. "That's strange. But I have an even stranger story," Susie said, ordering another skinny latte, her fourth in 20 minutes. "I covered a story in my early 20s about an old man who had murdered a Jewish family in New York back in 2008. "Why, was he anti-Semitic?" asked Mick, wondering what this had to do with his encounter with Jenkins, or the bomb. "He had no prior history of racism or mental illness, never drank or smoked. He was a saint according to all the people I interviewed about him. And then one day he decides to murder a family, telling the cops Hitler made him do it." That's messed up. But I don't see your point. Doesn't make sense. Mick replied, perplexed. That is my point. We live in a crazy, messed up world, trying to make sense or apply logic to random and tragic circumstances, trying to attach reason to why we do what we do. My point is, sometimes bad things just happen, without any rhyme or reason. Sometimes messed up and random is just messed up and random. And people like you and me have to report it and make a living on the mess maniacs like that leave behind. So, since we are in the same profession, will you join me? Mick asked, with a more pleading tone to his voice than he would have liked. Well, I was already working this myself. However, your take on this story has intrigued me, Mr. Dalton. Yes, I'll join your little project, on one condition. Name it, he said, slightly overeager. She raised her empty cup. Buy another latte? And I'm in. Mick smiled at her. Deal. He sealed it with a free coffee. Mick now had a team. The wheels seemed to be rolling well.